Okay, so Carhartt has been around for over 130 years now, and even though we've been around that long, we didn't have a very modern workplace. So we've been undergoing quite a transformation as we move into Office 365 here. So we have a global audience. I work in corporate communications. I serve a global audience across the US, Mexico, and our European office.
Wonderful. So as you and I have talked a couple times at this point, I really want to dive into the beginnings of everything. Okay. Now, what was the catalyst for moving your organization to the modern workplace? What was the impetus to make that jump?
We had a lot of disparate programs and running on different types of technologies, and we had a new CIO come in, and he was trying to get his arms around all of it and get everybody at least moving in the same direction. And part of it also was we had our servers were just redlined. We didn't have any more room. They didn't want to keep adding them, and that was adding to some of the issues we were having. So we moved towards Office 365, and that's where it all started.
Okay. Now, in terms of redline and servers and all of that fun stuff, there's some other additional questions in terms of, you had all of these challenges, and where were you trying to get to? So you start with these challenges. What were you trying to get your end game to when you started?
Well, we were trying to get everybody on the same stream and trying to make it so you would have some programs were optimized for Explorer, some were optimized for Chrome. One of our SAP processes only worked in a certain version of Explorer. So trying to get everybody all on the same page and moving the same way was the biggest reason. My role in it was more towards engagement and trying to get everybody, trying to get messaging out to everybody and sharing news about the company and just putting everything in a central location where everyone could access it.
Okay, I can imagine given your global workforce, it must be difficult to keep everybody on the same page, especially if things are working in all kinds of different sections.
Yeah. We also have a large number of non-computer users, so trying to, take the messaging that we were sharing with people that were on computers and then also getting it to them in a timely manner was all part of the process as well.
Okay, then on top of that, what were the additional pain points that you were having? I know we talked about multiple ways of communicating. You had given some pretty good examples as we were talking the other day on, the story of your corporate communications team. Intranet was in the one version of Explorer, but then your creative team couldn't access it because they were accessing things on their Macs. And then there was the shared drive for files. The creative team also couldn't access because of that Mac to PC relationship. Could we dive a little bit further into that?
Sure. So that was one of the drivers. We had a whole section of the marketing team that was they would just throw up their hands and say, we can't see it, can't do it. And that doesn't really engage people when they can't share in the information that's out there. So my boss had kind of challenged me and said, what can we look into and how can we move forward and get everybody to the same spot? And some of the pain points, there was just resistance. They were like, this isn't going to work. It didn't work before. Why should we believe you, kind of thing. So, excuse me, I'm getting froggy. There was a lot of overcoming that resistance. And then part of the issue as well is when they rolled out 365 here, it wasn't done in as planned a way as it could have been. So they just kind of threw it out there and expected everybody to adopt it and understand it and be okay with it. And when people didn't understand it and weren't okay with it, then they just were like, we're out, it really doesn't work. So then we had disillusioned Mac users and disillusioned PC users as well.
Okay, so that is definitely not a good combination.
No, never.
So then you have these pains, people are using different browsers, different systems, different computers. How did you start down your path towards digital transformation or moving to a modern workplace? Was there, this team approach? Was there a strategic planning team? Were you working with any outside partners? How did this evolve at Carhartt?
So it came down from IT that it was going to be Microsoft. We were very much a Microsoft shop, even with the creative people that were using Macs. So Office 365 was the way we were going to go. And that way we could have everything in the cloud. And as I mentioned, my boss kind of challenged me and said, how are we going to put all this together? Because, people were still kind of half exploring. Some people had teams, some people had groups, people were starting communication sites, and there was still, everything was just all out there. So we went back to IT and said, we'll help you fix this, but you have to let us know what our options are. So Microsoft came in and did a presentation on their new hub site, which they were really just rolling out at that time, which would be almost 2 years ago now. And we were like, yep, that's it. That's what we need. We need this hub site. And then we went back to IT after that and said, okay, so how do we do this? We don't know how to build it. We're going to need governance. We need help. So that's when we had Ryan Charnock came in from CDH, or Red Level rather, and just did a great job of working us through the governance workshops and getting us all set up.
So now with everybody in place and moving things forward, you're much further along in the journey than when we talked back in October. What has changed or progressed between October, when we first had a wonderful panel discussion with you, to today?
We've added a couple more sites. We have representation from all the functional areas in the company are now on Carhartt Central, which is what we call our hub site. And it's really, we force everyone's homepage to it, but people were allowed to change that if they want, but we still are averaging really high numbers. We're getting more and more comments on stories. We've gotten into a much more regular cadence of sharing out a news digest, and people are asking to be included in it. So we know it's working. I've been doing a lot of research around Yammer. Yammer also, when it rolled out, was not well adopted at all. So it looks like they've got a lot of great new features coming out in 2020. And we're building a new community site that'll be attached to Carhartt Central, where people can just chat and talk and give it a little bit more personal feel.
Okay. Now, you brought up a really good point in terms of, through this process, there are things that you didn't anticipate or things that you did anticipate, but they didn't quite go that way. What were some of the key learnings that you had, maybe some of the gotchas that you might have experienced?
Well, for key learning, you have to have a plan in place and you have to actually work the plan. So as I mentioned, when they first rolled it out, they did have just 2 pilot groups. When I say it, I mean Office 365. There were 2 pilot groups, but there wasn't a whole lot of education behind the scenes. They were just kind of like, you're testing this, so go in there, dive in, see what you think. And, it really wasn't the best approach. It should have been a little bit more process behind it and some more education and support. And so when we were having some, and I would say also there was no clear end date. There is a lot of misinformation out there, and there was no clear end date to really force people over. So those are two things you want to consider as well. But we had some people saying that all the client, desktop apps were going away, which isn't actually true. And then we had people that didn't like 365 because Microsoft didn't make it as useful as the desktop apps. It had differences in functionality, and some of those were pretty stark. And people were like, well, I don't like it. And since you could go back to not using it, people did. So those were two of the really big things, that there was no clear end date and there was no actual stepped process of training and education. And I think if they had done it a little bit more orderly, hindsight being 2020, going back and saying, nope, we're going to do this, we're going to give you for a group of people some thorough training, and then let you go out and train a little bit bigger group, and so on and so on, I think that might have helped a little bit.
Okay. Now that you're on a straighter path, I guess we can call it,
Sure.
What are the key tips or key pieces of advice that you would give to anybody else that is starting to embark on this path, or maybe experiencing something similar where it's been rolled out or released to everybody in an organization without, having that clear initiative? What plans did you and your team in the corporate communications department put together that has helped Carhartt turn the corner on your digital transformation?
I would say it was education. We put a lot of communications out there saying that we're doing this and this is the way it's going to be. And, with the governance rules that Ryan had helped us set up, that really helped us lay that clear path. We said, nope, you can't put that. It doesn't fall within our guardrails. Or yes, you can share that. It is completely correct for something to share. But we did a lot of education around Carhartt Central, and what it would be, what it would include, how to post things. So I think if you support everyone and provide all the information that they need, don't assume everyone will just play around and figure it out and be like, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. That is a really poor assumption. Assume that people are concerned. Some people are downright scared, and people fear change. So you got to really sell what's in it for them. You have to be able to push that out there and say, these are the benefits. Mm-hmm. And that's since we've launched Carhartt Central, because people know I'm the one that owns it. I get calls saying, please come here and teach us about it. I'm like, well, I'm not IT. I can only teach you so much, but at least I can give them the information about what is shared there and how they can share stuff as well. And also some of the benefits of Office 365, OneDrive, and having access to all of your information. I'm a big champion of it, and I try to, whenever I do talk to someone, say, if you just did this, you'll have access to all your stuff. It's all right there.
Now, I think we had talked about your story of Yammer when it was initially rolled out, kind of being this wild, wild west, where mm-hmm. you were told, hey, invite your friends to Yammer. And then things happened. Could you get a little bit into that? Because I like that story just because it gives some great color to how things can spin quickly.
Yeah, so Yammer got out of control really fast. So as I mentioned, we had two pilot groups for the whole Office 365 rollout. They had a group of us in HR and a group in marketing, because those are the big service areas of the company, right? And those are the two big groups you want on board. So they said, this is a pilot, only you guys have access, don't worry about it, it's locked down. And then as soon as we all first logged in, we got an invitation saying explore Yammer. So when you clicked on Yammer, it said, welcome to Yammer and invite your friends, who else would like Yammer? And that wasn't locked down. So people started going in, just clicking through on all the names of different people across the company they worked with who were not in the pilot. And all of a sudden, email boxes everywhere are filling up with those invites to join Yammer, and join Yammer now, post your whatever story on Yammer, 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 Yammer. And IT was getting all these calls. What is Yammer? Is this spam? Should I be doing this? I don't know what it is. And so that got out of control. And then people didn't know what it was because it was supposed to be locked down. There had been no prior education around it. So we had someone posting pictures of a sweet potato because he, Yammer. And every day he'd post a different picture. And then other people would be like, hi, who's there? What is this? Not sure if it was, what it was. So that now we're trying to relaunch Yammer, and there's a lot of baggage to overcome from all that. People are like, no, I don't like it. And we're like, no, it's good. Just try it. So slowly but surely, we're starting to turn that corner and show some of the positives and the interactions. We've got several groups that have become very active on Yammer now, and that helps. We can say, look how they post all this cool stuff. So we're getting there, baby steps.
Great. It's always good to take baby steps. So now that you've taken this more phased approach and implemented governance, what have your results been so far?
I think more and more people are coming on board. The more people realize how useful it is, not just to have a central location to get news and information, but to also utilize OneDrive and be able to work from home. We had a building problem last summer and we were locked out. We couldn't get in. So they're like, everybody has to go home. And I had my laptop with me. So I just logged in, all my files were right there. And afterwards, people were like, how did you keep doing stuff like that? I said, well, if you move all your stuff to OneDrive and to the different SharePoint sites, you will have access. That helped a lot. So I think just the more positive stuff that comes out of it, the more the news spreads that this is a good thing. I'm partnering with some of the folks over in IT on the help desk team to push out more positive information and to provide additional training so that we can have champions across the company, as it were, to fill in the gaps when you can't get a hold of the help desk. You should be able to find somebody in your area that can, help you over the humps. So I think the more that people are having positive interactions, the more they like it and the more they're embracing it.
Okay, that's great. Now, you had mentioned all of your different global manufacturer or your global network, and some of those locations are different languages. So say down in Mexico, they don't necessarily speak English, or sometimes you have workers that aren't necessarily computer workers, but they're working in the manufacturing areas. How do you communicate to them, and how do you make sure that they're staying up on the most relevant information as well?
For our folks that are on the different facility floors, shop floors, and don't have computer access, we use a digital TV campaign, and I literally just pull news, photos, and videos from our Carhartt Central Hub site and input that into a program called Omnivex that I can change whenever and where as quickly as I want. We used to do more of a static PowerPoint that I just changed out once a month due to time constraints. And now if something comes up, I can just plug it into Omnivex and put it right out there. So we're trying to stay much more on top of keeping that news feed fresh for them. We used to do a print piece, and we still do a print piece, but trying to get that out the door, it's about a 6-week production time. So by the time it's actually delivered and on the floor, news would be old. So now with the digital TV screens, we've really been able to up our game in that regard. As far as translation services, I actually was just having a conversation with one of our IT guys in Mexico, because I can see when I'm on Office 365 or Outlook within 365, if I get an email in Mexican, in Spanish, it'll ask me if I want to translate it, and I can translate it, and it's very accurate. So we're trying to figure out how we can reverse that for them in Mexico. So that because they don't see that option yet, and we're not sure what setting that is. So if anybody at Microsoft is listening and can tell me how to do that, let me know, because that's our next big step, is being able to translate in real time for them instead of the delay of sending it out, getting it translated, and then bringing it back and then resending.
Okay, that is actually a great question. I would love to know the answer to that as well.
Yeah, let me know if anyone tells me.
Exactly. So one other question, kind of diving back into the governance piece of the work that you were able to do with Ryan and the implementation team over at Carhartt. What were the key learnings that you were able to glean from it? And then how are you implementing those key learnings and that governance process to engage your users?
So when it came, we went through, I think, 3 governance workshops, and we went through many, many different questions, and there was a lot of talk around whether or not we wanted to have levels of access, like restricting information to some groups. And after many, many discussions, and I'm sure Ryan could tell you some of them got a little bit heated, we said, you know what, we're going to make it simple. We're just going to say, anything that is posted on Carhartt Central is global. So no restriction. You can't say this folder is only for managers and above, or this page is only for people that work on whatever specific product. It was all global. So if you didn't care that everyone got to see it, that's where it went. And that it's been the touchstone as we've moved into adding sites and everything, because people call me all the time. They're like, I need to publish this calendar for this group of people that travels a lot, so where can I put it on Carhartt Central? I said, well, that's not really a global message, is it? It's, can't put it up there. And people want to do stuff specific to an activity or an event that happened at their facility, and they're like, hey, can I put this up there? And I'm like, you can. It's interesting news to people, but a better place for that would really be Yammer, because that's where you want to share that. So, it's really, the governance helped us find that one strong point that we could always go back to, and it's that it has been by itself the biggest thing, was just that it's all global. If it's on here, everyone can see it.
Now, with that governance training and rollout to the workforce, have you seen an increased usage in the different areas of Office 365, say between Yammer or Teams or SharePoint? Have you seen improved usage or correct usage?
Yeah, definitely. SharePoint has gotten, people understand why you should use SharePoint sites now. It's really helped. And Teams is not globally rolled out yet. So the couple of groups that are using Teams very regularly, and they are happy with it. But SharePoint has definitely ticked up because people have started figuring out what the benefits are to that. Yammer, as I said, we're kind of relaunching that, but it is picking up. We've got several of our more remote facilities, like our retail stores. We have 33 stores across the US now, and they are extremely active on Yammer, and which is great because they're separate from us. So we don't hear the news, but if you just log on to Yammer, you can see what's going on. And they've got some really fun, interesting stories because they're the ones that deal with our consumers on the front lines. So we are definitely seeing more engagement. It's going faster than it was, but it's still kind of slow.
Okay, well, slow and steady.
Yep.
Is a good place to be. So now you've gone through a series of governance trainings. You're slowly starting to roll out various digital communication opportunities. What is next on the horizon for Carhartt's digital transformation journey or the move to modern?
Well, we are still building out Carhartt Central. I mentioned it a little bit prior. We're adding a community site. It's not live yet, but it's we want to have a calendar of events that aren't necessarily corporate, but so if people are traveling to the different facilities, they can, it's kind of Carhartt meetups. That's not what we're calling it, but that's what it is. So if you were in a different area, you could go to the crowd calendar and be like, oh, look, this is going on, that'd be interesting. And anything posted on that, anyone is welcome to. So a little way of kind of building that camaraderie piece. We've got a campaign for Yammer around some really structured content where we're doing some, it's not launched yet, but we're going to do some Ask Me Anything type threads. We've got some show me your favorite Carhartt type things, stuff like that. So we're structuring content in a way that is engaging and keeps it fresh so people will keep coming back and, you know, remain engaged.
That sounds great. I assume there will be a post on the A18 hat.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, because as you know, anyone and everyone across social media can be found wearing an A18 watch cap. I'm trying to, oh, I'm not sitting in the right spot. You can't see one behind me here, but that's our ubiquitous watch hat with the cuff and the Carhartt logo. And yes, it's we would like our Yammer feed to be much more or as popular as our Instagram feed and people sharing photos of themselves wearing their favorite piece of Carhartt.
Absolutely. So you talked a little bit about what the purpose of your next steps are. You know, what are you anticipating the results of, you know, these efforts to be? Is it to, you know, amplify the corporate culture, intertwine the consumer culture within the corporate culture? What is Carhartt driving towards in these changes to a modern workplace?
Well, your associates, your employees are your biggest brand ambassadors, right? I mean, they're the ones that are on the inside, and Carhartt on the consumer facing side is very much got a cult following. You know, people make prom dresses out of brown duck. We have the A18 that is seen everywhere, and people just, we've got a great story, we've got great products, and people adore us. So we want to bring that from the outside in so that our associates feel that same kind of connection to the brand. So it's all about driving engagement and just keeping people informed and letting them know what's going on, as well as sharing their own stories and experiences with the brand.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you one more question, but before I get into that question, for anybody that might have some additional questions for Rebecca in regards to their digital transformation, if you could please post them through the Q&A pane. It should be on the right-hand side of your screen. We would love to answer your questions. But for right now, my one last question to you, Rebecca, is in one sentence or so. If you could summarize what it took to get to this point, what you have learned, and what you are anticipating going forward, I am sure, I know I would appreciate it, and I'm sure our group would appreciate it as well.
Okay. I would give you 2 words to sum it up. Empathy, or 3, I lied. Empathy, communication, and education. You have to communicate what you're doing, why you are doing it, and why people should want to adopt it. You need to educate them on all of it. Don't assume anyone knows how to use the technology, and you can't make those assumptions. And empathy, understand that change is scary for people and provide the support that they need for that. You know, when I was telling you before, when they first rolled it out, they said, don't worry, we hired 5 interns, they're going to help you. And it's like, well, it doesn't matter how well trained the interns are, how knowledgeable the interns are, they're still interns, and by definition, they're temporary. So that didn't feel good. You're going to have some young kids come in, right, in some cases right out of high school and college, and come in, tell us how to do everything in 6 weeks, and then they're gone. So who's going to support us after that? You know, so you need to, as IT professionals, support the rest of your company and provide that education, support, and be really ready to answer lots and lots and lots of questions that you didn't anticipate, because you're in it, you're in the zone, right? You know how to use this stuff. So don't assume anyone else can do that. Be ready to support them and educate them and communicate.
Yep, communication is key, especially when rolling out something that drastically changes how people work on a daily basis. So we did have another question come in, and it is specific to Carhartt Central. Do you have departmental, project, and collaboration sites on Carhartt Central?
It's a global site. So there are department sites on there where they share out information about what they're doing. We have a site for our innovation and insights team, and they talk about all the different possible upcoming products, new materials, R&D stuff, but they do not collaborate just as a team within Carhartt Central. They have their own team site for that. So any of the it's not a collaboration site, it's a communication site. They share out.
Okay, so if they're not collaborating specifically on Carhartt Central based on your governance rules, where are they doing that collaboration piece of it?
They either have their own SharePoint site, or they were called group sites when they were first rolled out, and I'm not sure if that's what they're still called. So if they haven't been upgraded to Teams, they're still on a group site. Carhartt Central is a hub site made up of communication sites.
Perfect. I think that dives into all of the full question of one of our guests. And again, if anybody has any additional questions, we would love to answer them either live here on our webinar or as we move forward. But next up, I would just like to say thank you once again to Rebecca for joining us. Mm-hmm. You did a great job, and I think that everybody got some great information out of this. In the meantime, for anybody that has additional questions or would like to learn more about governance or rolling out digital transformation and moving to modern, you can feel free to reach out to us at info@redlevelgroup.com or give us a call here at Red Level at 248-412-8200, or hit us up at our website, redlevelgroup.com. Although we did have an additional question come in. Okay. So Rebecca, for you, the next question goes into kind of the rollout piece of it. So did everyone just begin using the application, just play around to learn Office 365, or did you offer formal classes and trainings?
It was mostly play around. When it came out, they were like, it'll be organic. Just go forth, 365 it up, figure it all out. There was a lot of pushback almost immediately on that. So there were some very small trainings, but nothing very in depth, which is why we ended up having to revisit the whole thing.
Okay, so it started as very informal and moved over to formal with formalized groups to evangelize the systems.
Well, they had Ryan come in and he was on board. I don't know which days of the week it was, but you could set time with him for your groups, and he would walk everyone through how to build a group site, or how to move files over to OneDrive and SharePoint. So there was some retrofitting of the explanations.
Okay. Another question that came in, do you use any third-party application to supplement functions?
I do not for Carhartt Central yet. We have looked at a couple. We aren't really there yet. As we move towards embracing more video content, there's possibility. We looked at a couple of different email programs that would allow us to track engagement through that, but nothing has been determined yet. That doesn't mean other groups aren't using something. It's just I'm not aware of it.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, I'd like to once again say thank you. We appreciate all of your help and your advice when it comes to moving to a modern workplace. For anybody that might have any additional questions, I will be sure to send them over to Rebecca. Rebecca, I will see if I can find out some more information on the translation portion.
Please do.
For friends down in Mexico.
That would be great.
Great. Everybody have a wonderful day and thank you very much.
Thank you.